What is up, Wire fans? Kino here. And as you guys might have seen in some of my announcements, I am planning on reviewing The Wire in the same way that I reviewed The Sopranos, highly edited, talking about all the details and everything like that. But I have not seen the series yet. And in order to kind of tide you over with some Wire content while I learn about the series and become, very familiar with its subject matter, I decided I would film my initial reaction to each of the episodes. So today we're going to be reacting to Season 1. One of the inspirations for the Soprano vlogs was originally the Nostalgia Critic's Avatar vlogs. It was fun to watch him discover a series, fall in love with all the characters, and just, kind of experience that journey from start to finish. So I'm hoping this will be along those same lines. I am going into the series knowing a few things. I've just kind of learned a few things about The Wire so far, but I've not seen it, and this is a very new experience for me. So I'm hoping you guys will enjoy this, and let's jump into the episode. This is Season 1, Episode 1, The Target. Now, we open on a murder that's happened, and we're following Detective McNulty, I believe his name is. He's talking with a witness to the crime. It was the guy's friend. And the dialogue that they have here is making me think that, like The Sopranos, this show is about America. He's talking about the fact that, it's only right that they let this guy who is stealing the money from the game play, because that's the American way. Everyone has a chance to play the game, but unfortunately some people lose. So I'm thinking that's a very thematic piece of dialogue, even though I've only seen this one episode so far. Now, McNulty is an interesting character. I know he's not specifically the only main character, but it seems like we're going to kind of follow mostly him this season. And he seems like someone who, wants to go above and beyond. He gets into trouble in this episode because he talked to a judge about the Avon Barksdale crew, and he drew a lot of attention on their crew. I think very intentionally. I think he did that on purpose because he wants the police to start taking this crew seriously. It seems like he's been, gathering information on them, and he's, trying to capture them and arrest them. So it'll be interesting to see his journey. He seems a little crazy in the head, too. There's a scene where he's standing on the train tracks, and the train is coming, and he's just standing there pissing. So we're seeing a recklessness in him that I think might land him in trouble. On the police side, too, we have some interesting characters. So we have the narcotics department, and we had two guys who don't know much about them. I recognize one of the guys was on Oz. He was the guard who was a newbie and kind of got into a bunch of trouble. So I've noticed that HBO hires a lot of the same actors. Also, the guy who's in charge of the narcotics department, he was on Oz as well. And out of that kind of group, it seems like this one female detective, Kima, I believe her name is, seems like she's going to be an interesting character. Looks like she's kind of like the hard-working one out of the group. She's going to school for something else outside of her, full-time job as a detective. So it'll be interesting to see where that character goes. On the murder side, which is where McNulty is, he's got a partner, Bunk. Seems like you're kind of stereotypical, I'm getting too old for this shit kind of cop. But he's been pretty funny so far, and it'll be interesting to see if the murder that he picked up, goes anywhere, or if that's like a separate storyline that he'll be following this season. I should note too that I am aware of the fact that The Wire, each season of The Wire follows a semi-unique storyline. I know the characters cross over and it's all telling one story, but I know we focus on like different parts of the cities. That's just something I've heard people talk about. So it'll be interesting to see. Like I said, I think this one is going to focus on the cops pursuing the drug dealers. That's what it seems like the main focus is on so far. And speaking of drug dealers, we're introduced to probably some of the most famous characters from The Wire. We've got Avon Barksdale, who is the leader of this up-and-coming crew. They control a lot of the drug trade in Baltimore. and his number 2 guy is Stringer Bell, which of course I've heard of Stringer Bell. I know he's one of the most popular characters on the show, and he seems like the more serious one of the group. He's like focused, no nonsense type. So, like I said, I know a little bit about him, but we'll save that for when the story kind of focuses on him. And the other main character that we're kind of following in the drug trade is Avon's nephew, I think it is. It's a relative, maybe it's a cousin. I'm forgetting the name. Is it DeAngelis or D'Angelo? He was arrested on a murder. He shot a guy kind of in self-defense, but he drew a lot of attention to the crew. And he's been punished by being sent into the pit, which is this very low-level drug trade. He was operating on the towers, which are the more richer clients, I think. But this is like the bottom of the barrel, and he has to work his way back up. And he seems like kind of an innocent soul. He seems like he doesn't really think things through, and he gets into trouble. But it doesn't seem like there's a lot of malice. He seems like a younger, innocent character, which would be interesting to see. And another interesting thing about this episode was we're learning that just like The Sopranos, I think this came out around the same time as maybe season 3 of The Sopranos, which is right when 9/11 happened, that is having an effect on the drug prosecution and the criminal prosecution area. They don't have as much money because that's all going to counterterrorism now. And in fact, we see a scene with the FBI where they have all this technology to be able to catch drug dealers, but they're being reassigned to terrorism. I noticed that was a theme in The Sopranos, and it looks like that's going to be a theme in this season as well. But overall, really interesting start. It did get me hooked. I do want to watch the next episode and see where it goes from here. But stay tuned next time for the next episode of The Wire, coming soon. What is up, Wire fans? Kino here, and I thought I'd make myself a little bit pretty for you guys today. We're looking at the second episode of Season 1, The Detail. Now, this episode really focuses around the politics of the police department. The major, or I guess he's not the major, he's on his way to becoming major. The guy in charge of the investigation into Barksdale, I think his name is Daniels. He has been given a bunch of men, but they're all kind of useless except for a few of them. And there's this whole, negotiation process as he tries to get better people, but he's pretty much just been given, the useless guys because the department wants to dump them on him. And there's an aspect to it where he kind of can't win either way. The department doesn't really want him to succeed. They want him to make some arrests, but they don't want to make a big splash. They want to cover up things and not look incompetent. That's the number one priority for the department, is just don't look incompetent. They don't actually care about, really catching Barksdale. So it's interesting to see that, the police are having their own, internal problems as they try to do this investigation. And we get to learn more in this episode about the different police officers who are a part of this team. McNulty, of course, again, he's the loose cannon. He's the one who's really driving the case forward. He doesn't want to play politics. He goes behind people's backs. And the only thing he's really concerned about is, getting the people behind this. So he's willing to bend the rules and, piss off his bosses if it'll make that happen. Again, Kima seems like the only smart one on the narcotics team. She's the one actually, making investigative progress. She has her friend, the druggie, identifying who's a part of Barksdale's crew, and so that now they have a lot of information on who his top guys are. However, the other narcotics people, Herc and Carver, I think their names are, and there's also this new guy. I forget his last name, but he's really incompetent. He shoots off his weapon accidentally. He's constantly causing trouble, but he's protected because he knows someone high up. He's the son-in-law. And these three clowns go down to the towers where Barksdale's crew operates, and they go start causing trouble. They're pretty much, abusing their power as police officers, harassing people, and this leads into them getting into a big, fight with the people who live in the tower. They're throwing things down at them. They end up assaulting some kid, and the kid loses his eye. And this is just going to be another problem on top of this, because now the Internal Affairs Department is investigating them. So again, this whole investigation is a mess so far, and it's pretty much only being carried by McNulty and Kima. We also get some more insight into D'Angelo. Like I said before, he seems like the soft one amongst the Barksdale crew. He really feels bad when this witness is killed, pretty much because of him, because he killed the one guy and this guy was a witness to that. And they lie, of course, and they make it seem like this guy had kids when he didn't. But either way, D'Angelo really feels for him. So we're seeing that he has a conscience, and he's kind of a softie compared to these other drug dealers. And I think that's going to get him into some trouble. I think he's continuing to, bring attention onto their crew, and I'm wondering if maybe that'll get him killed later on. We'll see. Speaking of the Barksdale crew, though, Avon himself seems to be a pretty nice guy. He's, when we see him, he's wearing an apron and he's cooking. So it seems like he's kind of a more chill guy. Maybe it's just because this guy is his nephew or something like that. But he seems to be very forgiving of D'Angelo. So I'm wondering if, maybe he's a little weak himself. We'll see where this goes. Again, I don't know, where the story is going, and I might be saying some completely wrong things here. But those are some interesting things I noticed. And again, this is my first time watching this series, so if I don't get everything, or I miss some things, or I forget some details from this episode, this is because it's a first watch. So yeah, it's an interesting episode. We'll see where it goes from here. And I'll cover the next episode soon. Thanks. All right, here we are with Season 1, Episode 3, The Buys. Now, this is the first episode I noticed that each of the episodes apparently starts with a quote from one of the characters. I must have missed it the last two episodes. But in this one, I noticed that the quote was, "The king stay the king," which occurs at the beginning of this episode where they're playing checkers with a chess set, and D'Angelo is explaining the rules of chess to his guys here. And of course, they're using chess as a metaphor for, life in general, the drug dealing game, and also I think just business in America. They're talking about the fact that, the king is the, most powerful person. All the rest of the crew is there to protect the king. And there was great metaphors of like, Avon is the king, he doesn't do too much, and Stringer is the queen. So it seems like Stringer has more of the power. And we'll see a little bit about that this episode. But it was very, on the nose about the fact that, this chess description is very metaphorical for the show in general. But I thought that was pretty interesting. Now, there's two things happening in this episode. One, the police are continuing their investigation. Apparently, the incident that the cops got into last episode, where they went down to the towers and they, assaulted a kid there, and the kid's like blind in one eye now. Apparently, that got swept under the rug. The police are covering things up, and again, we're seeing that even though one side of there's one side of the law and the other side there's criminals, even the police in their own way are kind of breaking the law and doing what they have to do to get the job done. And there's a lot of corruption in the police force, which we'll get to a little bit later. But they don't, like I said in the last episode, they're not really looking to make a difference in the drug war. What they're looking to do is to just make some headlines, make some arrests, and they just want it to go away. It's the whole politics of the law enforcement system in Baltimore. But the police are continuing their investigation. They're identifying more members of Barksdale's crew. They even managed to get a picture of Barksdale, which they didn't even have a picture of him for the longest time. But this one detective, he's the one who's like constantly like working on some woodworking thing, and it looks like he's not really like paying attention to the investigation. He just randomly walks out of the room, goes to this boxing gym where he knows there's a picture of Barksdale, and gets one. So it seems like even though he appears lazy, he's actually really knows what he's doing. And also in this episode at the end, he writes down this number on the wall that he sees. So it looks like he's actually pretty sharp. So I'm wondering if he might be a key piece of the investigation. But they're making headway on Barksdale. They finally have a picture of him. They send an undercover guy there to go buy drugs so they can identify, where the drugs are coming from, and even find the stash house. Although the police heads mess it up because they want them to go in there guns blazing, make some arrests, and this is just going to mess up the investigation. And McNulty in general is very upset about this. He thinks that they're, quite rightly so, ruining the case. And he, again, goes behind his boss's back, and he goes to the state's attorney, who it turns out he's actually sleeping with, and he gets some information about how to clone one of their pagers, like replace it with one of theirs, so they can get some more information on these guys. So we'll see where that goes next episode. But the other shocking thing that we learn here is at the end of the episode, McNulty's FBI friend tells him that Daniels is dirty. Or at least they think he is. He has a lot more money than a guy like him should have, and they're thinking he might, be involved in some things because of that. Now, we briefly saw last episode with his wife, or whoever that was, that it looks like they live in a pretty nice house. So he does seem to have money, and I'm wondering if maybe he is, a dirty cop, like taking bribes or something like that, or if maybe they've got the detail wrong here. He seems like a pretty honorable guy from, what we've seen so far, but, we haven't seen too much of him yet, so I can't make that judgment. But it'll be interesting to see where his character goes. Meanwhile, on the drug dealer side, we get the first introduction of Omar. And I'm sad to say that a few days ago, we learned that Omar's actor, Michael K. Williams, recently passed away. I haven't read too much information on it yet. It seems like it might have been a drug overdose, but he unfortunately is no longer with us, which is very sad. I know is one of the more popular characters on this show, and he was also on Community in season 3, and I thought he was really great there too. So very sad to see him go. But this is the first introduction we have to his character, and he goes and robs the drug dealers. So he finds out where their stash is. He goes in there guns blazing, shoots some guy, and is ripping off the drug dealers. So it seems like he's going to be kind of an antagonist to the drug Avon Barksdale's drug crew that we've got to know so far. And there's also an interesting scene here where D'Angelo goes to talk with Stringer Bell and give him the money, and they're talking about the fact that the drugs that they've been getting lately are very weak. But funny enough, when drugs are weaker than normal, people buy twice as much to get a high. So he's saying the fact that they do their job worse, they make more money. The government does its job better, and no one cares. So it's a funny situation we're seeing in Baltimore here, which is that everything is kind of messed up. The police department is running itself terribly. The drug dealers are going through their own problems, and there's a lot of parallels between these two organizations. Even though they're on opposite ends of the law, there are a lot of similarities that they're going through here. But that was the episode. Thanks for watching, and next one's coming up. Thanks. Alright, so you guys might notice I'm in the same clothes as the last episode, and that's because I watched another one in the same day. I gotta admit, I'm getting pretty into this show. It's surprising because nothing really necessarily exciting has happened. It seems like it's a very slow show, which I actually really enjoy. At this point in Breaking Bad, Walter had murdered some people. Things were starting to go crazy. But really, it's seeming like this investigation is going really slow, which fits the theme of the show, which seems to be that, the police are not really efficient. There's so many things going against each other. And it's funny, the cold open that they have, they're trying to move this desk, and there's two cops on one side of the door, two cops on the other side of the door, and they can't move it. And then at the end, they realize that they were pushing against each other. The one team thought that they were going one way, one team thought they were going the other way. I think that was a great metaphor for the police department in general, and what the problems they face are in this show. I also will say I'm really digging the theme song for this, almost more so than the Sopranos theme song. I don't know, the soul music that they got playing here, just really well done. I really like it. But on to the episode. So they did the street bust last episode. They went into the low rises, messed some people up. One of the guys, Bodie, I think his name is, he ended up punching a cop. They beat him down, and then they sent him to, I think, what looks like a juvenile facility. Apparently he's underage. He looks pretty young. But funny enough, he just walks right out because security is terrible at that place. But for other people, they managed to arrest them and charge them. But it's looking like no one's going to testify against Avon. Either they're too scared or they just don't want to rat. But they haven't really made any progress with this. However, it's looking now like the police might start actually taking this seriously. It seems like they've decided they actually want to get Barksdale rather than just make it go away, which was the previous goal. So they're authorizing the use of the pager clone. They have to basically prove that there's no other way to get Barksdale. So they do a bunch of stuff and intentionally mess it up so that they can go to the judge and say, we have to do this pager clone method, so that way they can see who's calling each other and get more information. And the detective who I mentioned last time, the one who was always working on his little toys, we finally learned his backstory, and he turns out to be a pretty cool guy. He is very much like McNulty, a guy who wants to do the right thing even when it's going to cost him his personal career within the police. So McNulty finds a kindred spirit in him. And we also get some more character on one of the two stupid guys. I always forget who's who. I think it's Herc, the white one. They bust into Bodie's house looking for him. He's not there, but his mom's there. And he kind of apologizes for, they were cursing when they came in trying to look for him. So we're seeing that this guy is multidimensional as well. He kind of comes off like an idiot, when he's surrounded his young guys. But it seems like at his core, he might be a little bit more respectful than the others. So that was interesting to see. I'm really starting to like a lot of these characters. Kima, we get to learn a little bit more about her. She's awesome. We still haven't learned about Daniels, what's going on with him, if he's crooked or not. But I think the slow pace of the show has given me room to really start to like these characters. It really seems to be a character-driven show rather than the plot. Because like I said, really 4 episodes in, nothing has happened. We've barely seen Avon Barksdale or Stringer Bell or anything like that, like those guys. And speaking of the criminals, we learn a little bit more about D'Angelo. So he's not as innocent as I originally thought. He killed a woman apparently in cold blood because she was, threatening to snitch on Avon. And yeah, that's an interesting dimension to the character that I didn't originally see. So yeah, a little bit more to him than meets the eye. And of course, the drug dealers are looking for Omar now because he ripped them off last episode. He's kind of a well-known figure in the community. He makes a living robbing drug dealers, which is pretty interesting. And he's also gay, which that's an interesting detail about him. Obviously, in this culture, the drug culture, it's pretty odd to have an openly gay criminal like this. But I think that's probably just going to add to his uniqueness. He seems like very much a different character than we're used to seeing. So that'll be interesting to see more of him. But yeah, that is pretty much the episode here. And stay tuned for next time. All right, now we're back with season 1, episode 5, The Pager. Now, they've gone ahead and they've cloned D'Angelo's pager, so the police are now able to track who is paging him, and they're also tracking the calls he's making on the payphone. However, the numbers that he's getting paged on are not real numbers. It's a code that they use to call the real numbers. So they're not actually getting any useful information because of this. It turns out that the drug dealers are a little smarter than they thought. They have this whole system designed to evade the police. And we see in this episode at the beginning, just how careful Avon is to, not get caught by the police. So definitely a different class of criminal than I think the police are used to dealing with. And this pager system really stumps them until eventually Prez, the cop who shot his gun and blinded that kid, actually figures it out. So he's been in kind of the doghouse ever since then. He's been, left at the office, but in this episode he actually comes through and proves to be useful. And so I like that in this show, it seems like all the characters are getting a fair shake. I don't typically like characters like, I guess an example would be like Draco Malfoy, a character who are kind of one-dimensional, evil, incompetent, useless. And it seems like even the people on this team, even the ones that we kind of, the first impression was that they were like a fuck-up or they were useless, they are getting a fair shake. So that's interesting to see. But the police are also tracking Omar. So they know that Omar is the one who, ripped off the drug dealers. And they want to talk to him and maybe either, arrest him on a gun charge and then get him to give them information or figure out some kind of deal. And speaking of Omar, damn, what an awesome scene where he goes to rob another group of drug dealers. He's just walking down the street with his shotgun, whistling the song, and he leads them into a trap. What a badass. I can tell why this guy is one of the favorite characters on the show. And then when the police actually do go to talk with Omar, he's kind of ahead of the game. He knows what they want. He refuses to directly cooperate, although he does give them a hint that it was Bird that killed the witness from the first episode. And he also is aware that Bubbles is their informant. So we can see he's a sharp guy. Although in this episode something happens to his boyfriend or lover, I don't know what they are, but he gets captured by the drug dealers. They find him, and at the end of the episode they capture him. So we'll see how that goes. I think they're probably going to want information about Omar's location because that's who they really want to get. And we'll see if the guy gives it up or they end up killing him. So that'll be interesting to see. But meanwhile, on the drug dealer side as well, we get some more information about D'Angelo and Avon. They go to see, I think it was Avon's brother, who is in a coma because apparently he got shot in the head. And he was kind of using this as a lesson to tell D'Angelo that, you have to be quick. You always have to be looking out for yourself. Otherwise, one wrong move, it's over for you. And we can see that's really Avon's philosophy. That's why he's so careful. He's so paranoid. He doesn't want to end up like this guy. And, D'Angelo is going through some things in this episode too. So, he's kind of struggling to see where he fits in. He takes his girl to this fancy restaurant, and he really feels out of place because he's from the hood, so he doesn't really fit into this high class society. Although he wants to, and at the same time, he's kind of feels like he's being passed over a little bit because Avon is promoting Stinkum, I think his name is. These guys have funny names. But he's promoting him to be in charge of one of their operations rather than D'Angelo. And it might be because he fucked up and let himself get robbed. But yeah, it seems like he's being passed over a little bit, and he might be a little resentful of that. And we get a little more scenes with Stringer Bell here. We're seeing how smart he is. They know, or at least they suspect, that someone in the pit was ratting them out to Omar. That's how they knew where the drugs were, and he has them not pay any of his guys, and the ones that come to him for money are innocent because they're broke. But the one who doesn't come to them for money is, the informant, because he has extra money that they don't know about. So really smart on his part. And I would really love to see more of Stringer and Avon. We haven't really gotten to see them. It's been just kind of glances here and there at them, but they seem like interesting characters, and I'd really like to know more. And the last little thing happening in this episode is Herc and Carver, they finally catch Bodhi. They run up on him and capture him, and they take him to the juvenile detention center. And they start beating on him like always. A bit of police brutality definitely on their part. I mean, this guy's not really doing anything to them. He just was kind of insulting them a little bit, and they just beat the shit out of him. But funny enough, at the end of the episode, they end up kind of bonding with him a little bit. They end up playing pool together as they wait for him to be put in a cell. So again, we're seeing that a lot of these characters, it seems like they could get along if they just weren't on opposite ends of the law. Like I said, I think there's a lot of parallels that, all these characters are kind of the same. They're all dealing with the same problems. It's just on opposite ends of the game board, the chessboard that they always use as a metaphor. So that's pretty interesting to see those parallels there. But that is the episode, and we'll watch the next one soon. Thanks. And we're back. It's the same day. I'm really getting into this habit now where I watch at least 2 episodes a day. I really want to see what happens, and I find myself wanting to see it more and more. But you might have noticed that the background has changed here. I just dragged this shelf over from the other side of the room just to change things up and see how it looks. But this episode, Season 1, Episode 6, is called The Wire. So it's the titular episode of the series. And it definitely does deal with, wiretapping that the police get information from. And we'll deal with that shortly. But the episode opens with Wallace, I believe his name is. It's a little kid who I just realized is Michael B. Jordan, a very young Michael B. Jordan. I don't know if he got his start on The Sopranos, but he was in Season 1 very briefly. He's one of the kids that chases the young Tony during the down neck flashback. And he's so cute in this series. He's so bright-eyed and innocent looking. And when we see him in this episode, he is taking care of a bunch of kids who live in this apartment with him. I don't know if they're his siblings or not, but he kind of makes sure that they have food and juice, and sends them off to school. So we're seeing definitely another side to this character, and we're also seeing that he is a little more innocent than a lot of the hardened drug dealers. He's really bothered by what happened to, I forget the guy's name, but it's Omar's lover. They caught him last episode, and they tortured and killed him, and it was pretty brutal. And Wallace is pretty disturbed by what he saw. He doesn't understand why they had to go that far. And it's really bothering him, some of the aspects of, the game that they're all involved in. Now, D'Angelo has also started a relationship with, I believe she's a hooker, but he started a relationship with her. It seems like he likes her a lot more than the girlfriend that we saw him with, the mother of his kid, because he says that, she always wants money or wants something from him. So they seem to be spending a lot of time on this relationship. We were introduced to her in the first episode, so I'm wondering if she might be important to what's going on with him. But we also learned that there apparently was not a snitch in the Barksdale crew. They had this scam where they were withholding money from all of the workers to see who still had money left over, and that person was the snitch. but there was really no one who had any extra money. The only people who had money were stealing some drugs from the guys, which is bad, but they're not snitching. And D'Angelo, in this case, again, going along with the idea that he's a lot nicer than a lot of these other drug dealers, he doesn't turn them in for a beating. Instead, he just reassigns them where they can't steal from him anymore. So again, we're seeing a lot of these guys have different personalities, different philosophies when it comes to how to treat their people, and that's really interesting to see. Now, the police are making headway with the wires. They're figuring out the system the drug dealers have. They're getting information, pinpointing down murders based on the times of calls and everything like that. But there comes a complication because Major Rawls, who is the head of the homicide unit, wants to prosecute D'Angelo for the murder of that girl in the apartment and a bunch of other murders. And this is going to ruin the investigation into Avon Barksdale, because if the police move forward with this, he'll change up the whole system and they'll lose all the information they had on him. But Rawls doesn't care. He just wants to get rid of these cases, and he wants to get McNulty back on the team. So Daniels has to go and talk to him, tries to convince him not to do it. Eventually, he goes over his head and talks to their boss, and it seems like this might cost him career-wise, which that's been the whole struggle with Daniels this whole season so far. Is he's a company man, he wants to move up, but he also seems like a pretty good guy, and he wants to do the decent thing here and make sure that this case is solved properly. And in this case, he did it, and he sacrificed maybe his potential career. Like, Rawls is a vindictive guy, and he might come after him. So I'm interested to see where that goes. And I'm also interested, again, is he dirty? They haven't brought that up since then, but I'm wondering, because he seems like a good guy. I kind of doubt that he would be involved in that, but who knows? Maybe I might be wrong. Speaking of McNulty here, he's in even more hot water after this. Rawls really wants to get him fired now. He's having the guy Santangelo monitor him for any rule break-in so he can use it against him. And it's interesting in this episode. They bring in Omar, because after his boyfriend was killed, he's really upset. He wants to go see the body, and McNulty brings Omar with his kids because he's taking care of his kids that night. And I'm wondering if that might be a problem. I mean, his ex-wife seems like someone who doesn't want to share custody with him. I'm wondering if the fact that he didn't really abandon his kids. I mean, he was still with them, but he left them in the lobby while he took Omar to go see this guy. I wonder if she might use that to be like, he's endangering the kids, and he might lose even more custody of them. So yeah, I thought that was kind of silly of McNulty to do that. But again, it goes back to his character that all he cares about is the case. He doesn't care about nothing else. I mean, it seems like he loves his family, but definitely police work is number one for him. And speaking of Omar, really interesting turn of events here. His first instinct is to go get revenge, but the police managed to convince him to testify. So surprisingly, he's going to do it. Seemed a little weird. It seemed like with a guy like this, he might, want to respect the rules of, you don't snitch, you go get your revenge directly. But the police kind of convinced him that, he can't go after Avon Barksdale alone. He'll never get close enough. And this is the way to take him down, by testifying against the guy who killed the witness from the first episode. So it'll be really interesting to see where that goes. But thank you guys for watching, and yeah, we'll cover the next episode soon. Okay, we are back with the 7th episode of Season 1, One Arrest. Now, the police figure out that the drug dealers are going to make a resupply of the pit, and they intercept the guy carrying the drugs on the way there. And they get him, they get the drugs. However, it turns out that the kid who's bringing the drugs is the one that Prez hit with his gun in the eye and he blinded him. So that obviously is a complication in the case. And, Daniels takes an interest in this kid a little bit. He offers to, help him out if he ever wants to change his life and get out of the game. But this kid obviously does not take him up on that. He just kind of throws the card back in his face. And so I'm wondering if Daniels is just doing that to protect Prez so that this kid doesn't sue the department or whatever, or if maybe this is a genuine offer to him, because it does seem like a young kid, so he might be trying to help him out and steer him away from a life of crime. So that'll be interesting to see. And we get some more scenes with Daniels in this episode in general. He attends this very expensive fundraiser with his wife, who apparently works in like the nonprofit sector. And the boss, who's in charge of all the police officers, tells him that he needs to, learn who all the key players are in the political spectrum of Baltimore if he wants to move up to major. He points out that there's a state senator there, and that state senator controls the budget for the police department. So we're seeing again that it's not just the cops chasing the criminals. There's this whole political side of the Justice Department here that has to be considered when the police make any kind of decision. And we've seen all the corruption and deal making that goes along with that. And there's this really funny scene where Daniels goes into the kitchen with the servants, and they're watching a ball game, and one of the servants assumes he's a servant too, and starts talking to him about maybe coming back and stealing some stuff from this house that they're in. And then Daniels reveals he's a police officer. So that was pretty funny to see that. But the other major event happening in this episode is the police finally arrest Bird for the murder of the state witness in the first episode. So they take him down, they get the gun, it matches the murder. They have a witness, they have Omar's testimony, so this guy's pretty much dead to rights. And they're trying to get him to flip on Barksdale, but he doesn't seem like the type to flip. He was kind of mouthing him off. And then in this great scene, the Daniels tears up the photo they have of him so they can beat him some more and take a new photo. Really great scene there. And also in this episode, we get some more development with Santangelo. So he is the cop who pretty much does nothing all day. And Rawls told him, you either have to inform on McNulty to me, which he doesn't really want to do. He doesn't want to fuck over another police officer. That's against their code. But he says he either has to solve a case by the end of the day or rat on McNulty, and otherwise he's fired. So, he's pretty much, out of luck. He can't solve these murders. He's a terrible cop. He even goes so far as to go to a psychic to get some help. But luckily for him, Omar gives some more information on different unsolved murders, and one of them is his. And so they end up, being able to help him solve this case. And in gratitude, he tells McNulty that Rawls is going to take away his badge. And this obviously really upsets McNulty because this is all he has in his life. He is not, he doesn't have a family right now. He's divorced. He barely sees his kids. Although I noticed in this episode, he does still wear his wedding ring. So I don't know if that's, if he still wants to be married to his wife and that's just how he deals with it. I don't know what's up with that, but I noticed he had a ring. But yeah, he's obviously pretty messed up over the fact that he's going to lose out on the one thing he's good at, because he is a good cop. He doesn't play by the rules or anything like that, but there's no one who works harder on this case except for maybe Kima. But on the drug dealer side, a couple interesting things happen. One, Avon is starting to notice that something is going on. There's been a lot of issues with the pit, the stick up, the police coming around to arrest people. So he's starting to realize something's going on, and he shuts off all operations in the pit, which is obviously not good for D'Angelo because that's, his income stream. Stringer goes down there too, and he correctly identifies that the telephone that they're using is probably bugged. So he has them rip it out and start using other telephones. So the police are, pretty fucked over this in terms of their wiretap. But luckily, they have a new development with this arrest. But even still, good on Stringer to be able to recognize that they're always using this specific phone. And another interesting thing that happens is the bartender of the club that they're always at. He comes to D'Angelo and tells him that he has a supply on some drugs and he wants D'Angelo to sell it out of the pit, and they're going to keep Avon out of it and just make some money themselves. And D'Angelo says he'll think about it, and I'm wondering what he's going to do. Is he going to tell Avon that his guy is kind of trying to go behind his back with this? Is he going to be loyal to his family? Or is he going to try to make some money? Because he has been kind of stepped over quite a few times. He was demoted to the pit. The other guy was promoted over him. And now it doesn't look like he's going to be making any money. So I wonder if he might be tempted to take this deal. And then there might be consequences with Avon because of that. So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, that's pretty much the episode. Great one. I'm getting into it. And can't wait to watch the next one. All right, we're back with Season 1, Episode 8, Lessons. Now, this is a pretty interesting episode. It opens with this really funny scene that had me a little bit worried, where McNulty is with his kids at this market, and Stringer Bell just happens to walk in there, and he has his kids follow Stringer Bell and kind of see what he's up to. They're spying for him, which I thought was pretty funny that McNulty trained his kids to, be able to follow a suspect. But McNulty ends up even losing his kids for a little bit as they follow Stringer Bell and even get his license plate, which is great work on their part. But I was really worried that, he would get in trouble for basically losing his kids. I keep thinking, like, his ex-wife is going to be, pissed at him that he's constantly involving his kids with the investigation. A few episodes ago, he, had his kids with him with Omar, who's this guy who murders drug dealers. So I just kept thinking that, eventually there's going to be consequences for McNulty because of his recklessness of how he treats his family. But at least in this episode, nothing happens. They get the license plate of Stringer Bell, and there's a couple of instances actually where McNulty just happens to run into Stringer Bell. He happens to just see him driving by, and he follows him to this community college. And he's very surprised to see that Stringer is taking a economics class. So again, like we've noticed so far, Stringer seems to be the smartest one among these drug dealers, and it looks like he's taken this class to kind of get better at business, get better at understanding like economic principles, so that he can run, the drug business better. And we also see that he has this side business. It's like a Klinko's, a printing store, and he's getting them in line and getting them to realize that they had to take this seriously if they want to be successful. So those are some interesting things that happened. Another thing that happens is the police pull over. It's the guy from last episode that Daniels was talking to. He didn't know he was a cop. But this guy apparently has a connection with the Barksdale crew because he took some money for them. He's like a bag man. And they pull him over and they get the money and they're ready to take the money and arrest him. But the boss, the deputy ops boss, tells them to drop it and that their investigation is over. Because this guy is the driver for one of the state senators, and they don't want him to get implicated in anything. They don't want any of this information to hurt the important people in the city. They're worried the investigation could lead to something like that. So he tells Daniels to shut the whole thing off. Luckily for the crew, though, the judge orders that his wiretap has to last for 60 days. So they have, looks like, a couple more weeks to make some progress with this investigation. So it's not dead in the water. But again, we're seeing that for the police, it's all about politics. It's all about corruption. They're not trying to necessarily get justice. They just want, this one drug dealer taken down without any damage to any of the power players in the city. So again, that's always fascinating to see that dynamic there. But also going on, we have some things with D'Angelo. So, he is starting to, have his doubts about the business. He attends this party for Stinkum because he's been promoted and now he's running his own little operation. And they have this party where they're doing drugs, which is apparently against the rules. They're not supposed to be getting high. And he sees that one of the hookers or whatever they had there has OD'd on drugs. And Weebay doesn't really care. He's kind of indifferent to the whole thing. So he's seeing that, human life isn't really worth too much in the drug dealing game. And this is really starting to bother D'Angelo, even though, he's a murderer as well. So I don't know what he's complaining about. But he's thinking, if this is something he even wants to do or if he wants to leave. And we'll see where that goes. I can tell there's definitely some conflict happening here. And another big thing that happened was, of course, Stinkum is killed by Omar. They're running up on this territory that they're trying to take, and Omar's there waiting for them, and he kills Stinkum and wounds Weebay. And the drug dealers are debating how they want to handle it. Avon wants to increase the bounty, and he wants everyone hunting down Omar till they get him. He wants him dead. But Stringer says that, they should lure him into a peace negotiation. They should say they want to make peace, and when he comes out to the open, then they kill him there. So again, we're seeing the differences, I think, between Avon and Stringer. Stringer definitely is someone, I think, who thinks things through a lot more, doesn't let emotions rule him, and instead makes, the most logical decision. So I'm wondering how that's going to play out, but I think it is going to come to a clash between the Barksdale crew and Omar, because they both hate each other because of everything that's gone down. And the last little bit here that happened was because Omar killed Stinkum, who was actually going to be an important piece of the police investigation. They tell Omar, we don't want you killing these guys anymore. We want to use them as part of our investigation. But it looks like he's still going to, fight his war against them because that's just how the game is played. And Bunk, in particular, one of the other detectives on the homicide unit has caught the case for Stinkum, and they have to lie to him about Omar because they don't want Omar to be prosecuted. They need him for their investigation, but they're kind of screwing over this other detective because he's not going to be able to clear his case without their information. So Bunk is kind of torn about lying to another officer like that. Ultimately, he does it to protect McNulty. And then McNulty returns the favor because Bunk he's cheating on his wife. He's sleeping with this woman, and he gets called over to the woman's house late at night because Bunk is really drunk. Say that 5 times fast. He burnt all his clothes in the bathroom because he didn't want his wife to know that he was cheating on her, which is pretty funny. And then McNulty brings him back home and puts him to sleep in his kid's little bunk bed. Bunk in the bunk. Pretty funny. And then Bunk says something interesting where he says that McNulty is no good for people. And I'm wondering what exactly he meant by that. Of course, we've seen that McNulty, constantly puts the job before anything. His family is important to him, but ultimately the job is more important to him. But I'm wondering what Bunk meant by that exactly. Maybe he blamed McNulty for, helping him cheat on his wife. Maybe that's what he's talking about. Maybe he's just drunk. Who knows? But we do see that McNulty constantly causes problems for the people in his life. The state's attorney that he's sleeping with, his ex-wife, all his bosses. He's just kind of trouble, and he's ultimately so focused on making the case that he's not playing by the rules or playing politics. So that's definitely McNulty's character. Really interesting episode. Can't wait to see the next one, and I'll talk to you soon. All right, we're back again with another one. This time, season 1, episode 9, Game Day. Now, this one's pretty interesting because it opens with something I really wasn't expecting. We've got Avon and Stringer looking for a very skilled basketball player to compete with them in their neighborhood basketball game. It's the East Side versus the West Side, and it's something they do every year. And apparently, Avon's crew has been losing 2 years in a row, so they're really looking to win. Now, this is just a friendly kind of match here, but it kind of sets the stage for all the things that are happening in this episode. So the police are continuing their investigation. They make some headway, particularly with D'Angelo's girlfriend. I don't know what her occupation is, but the woman who works at the club that they're all at. They bring her in and they tell her that her friend, one of the dancers there, OD'd on drugs at Weebei's party, and then they just threw her in the trash afterwards. And this really convinces her that these guys like D'Angelo are evil. They don't care about her, they don't care about life, and ultimately, they'll use her just like they used everyone else. So they managed to, convince her, and she's going to be an asset to them in their investigation moving forward. She ends up breaking up with D'Angelo, who's pretty broken up about this. It seemed like he really liked her. The police are also making headway in tracking all of Avon's businesses. So it goes through the detail of how they have to go to all of these different locations to get all the different records and cross-reference them with other records. But they managed to piece together who owns all of these businesses and how they relate to Avon, because they all use the same lawyer. I think it's the same lawyer who we saw representing the crew in a few earlier episodes. So they are piecing together this information, and they're realizing that he makes a lot of money, millions of dollars a year, dealing drugs. And surprisingly, he's not really spending it on himself. A lot of it goes to campaign contributions. Now, this is opening up a whole can of worms. This is what the heads of the department were worried about. They were worried that the money would lead, to politicians. And it seems like someone important is on the take. Could be multiple people, we don't know yet. But this seems to go much further than drug dealing into, the political spectrum of Baltimore. So I can tell that there's going to be some conflict with the bosses over this. So it's going to be really interesting to see where it goes. They also make some progress by pulling over Weebei. They get some information on the wire that says that he's got money with him. So they pull him over and take the money. So they made a score there. But the money is short. The money that they turn in, Herc and Carver, is less than the reported amount on the wire. And so Daniels tells them, he thinks that they stole the money, which, cops sometimes do. When they take some money from a drug dealer or something, they'll keep a little bit for themselves. But he tells them, they have to return that money. But they didn't actually steal it. It turns out they just accidentally left it in the car. And they're kind of worried that, Daniels won't believe that they didn't steal it. Because it is suspicious. If money comes up short, you kind of assume that they intentionally were trying to take it. But really, it was just kind of falling all out of the bag. So we'll see where that goes next episode. But some interesting things happen with the drug dealers, too. So one, Wallace goes to D'Angelo and tells him that he wants out of the game. He was too messed up seeing that guy Brandon murdered like that. And so he decides he doesn't want to be a drug dealer anymore. And he says he wants to go back to school. And D'Angelo's pretty supportive. Remember, he was kind of feeling the same thing lately. So he gives him a little bit of money and tells him he's got a good heart. However, later we see him buying drugs. So I'm kind of wondering if he's not really planning on getting out. That might have just been a way for him to get some money to buy more drugs. He seemed pretty messed up ever since he saw that kid die. He's just getting high in his room all day. So pretty interesting. And I don't remember, it might have been last episode or it might have been this one, but there was a really great scene where one of his little brothers or whatever they are to him comes to him for help with his homework. It's a math problem where he's trying to add and subtract a bunch of different numbers. And then Wallace yells at him. He's like, he goes through a scenario instead of the scenario, which is like a bus. He goes through the scenario as if it was a drug deal, and the kid like instantly calculates the correct number. And he's like, if you could figure that out for a drug deal, why can't you figure it out for the bus? And then the kid's like, if you're wrong on the drugs, they'll fuck you up, which I thought was just a really great scene. And it kind of shows that for a lot of these people, it's the context that matter. They're really smart when it comes to drugs and, the business, but they're not so great when it comes to like, book smarts and the formal education system. But I think a lot of these guys are actually really intelligent. But the other thing that's happening is Omar rips off some of Avon's drugs. He just walks up and demands the drugs, and the guy's handed over because it's Omar. It's his reputation. And he gives those drugs to Avon's rival, the guy who was running the other side of the basketball game. And he gives it to him in exchange for Avon's pager number. So later, Omar pages Avon, and Avon goes out to the street to answer the telephone call. And while he's there, Omar is trying to sneak up on him and is ready to kill him. But Weebay shows up at the last minute and shoots Omar. So Omar gets hit. Avon escapes without a scratch. Now Omar missed his shot. And last episode, you'll remember, the quote was, if you take a shot at the king, you better not miss. And in this case, Omar missed, which I think could have serious consequences for him. Not that they weren't already trying to hunt him down for all the things he's done already, but going after Avon, I'm sure he's even more so gonna want to be hunting this guy down and killing him before he kills him. So that'll be interesting to see. But it seems like the investigation is really heating up, and I can't wait to see what happens next episode. So I'll talk to you guys soon. All I can say is, god damn, what a good episode. This series has been pretty slow so far. Not a lot of things happen in most episodes, but when it pops off, it really pops off. And I was on the edge of my seat at the end of this episode. This is the third one I watched today, and I really want to watch the next one, but it's getting pretty late, so I might have to wait. But we'll get to the ending. But first, let's talk about the other things that were happening in this episode. So the first is after Omar, misses the attack on Avon. They decide two things. One, they're going to have Avon step back from running the drug business. Everything's going to go through Stringer to keep Avon insulated from any, because they know the cops are on them. The cops followed him yesterday from the basketball game, and he was aware of that. So he knows the cops are looking into him, and so he needs to insulate himself from any wiretaps or anything like that. So we'll see how this affects the investigation. But the other thing they decide too is that they're going to approach Omar for a truce, and then they're going to use the truce to lure him in, and so they can kill him. And they have Proposition Joe, which is a great name for the character. But they have him. He's the leader of the rivals that they had the basketball game with, and they have him create like a meeting between Stringer and Omar, and they both agree to the truce. And Stringer agrees to pay Omar $5,000 as part of the settlement. But this lets Omar know that this isn't a real peace. They're gonna have him killed. So ultimately, he decides to leave and go to New York until the trial date. So he is officially out of the game now while they are wrapping up this investigation. Other thing, this has been a subplot happening for a little while, but I haven't really touched on it. So we have Bubbles, who's decided to get clean. He ever since he went to that one Narcotics Anonymous meeting, he's been thinking about getting clean, and he's finally decided to do it. He's living in his sister's basement, just trying to stay clean. And we'll see how that goes. He seems like, a sincere guy, a guy who wants to do the right thing. It's clearly these drugs have messed them up a little bit, but he still has a great spirit. So hopefully he'll be able to kick it. But I know how these things typically go, and usually there's a relapse involved when some tragedy happens, which in this episode it does. But we'll touch on that at the end. Another thing, I knew it. I knew that McNulty using his kids as part of that investigation would come back to bite him on the ass. I called it. And the ex-wife finds out about it, and she brings him to court to remove even more guardianship of their kids from him. And we learned some interesting backstory. So apparently it wasn't just the fact that McNulty is so focused on his cases. That's what I thought it was. But he was actually cheating. And he was cheating with the state's attorney that he works with. So that's why she divorced him. So again, we're slowly unpeeling more and more layers from these characters, which is interesting. But they ultimately work it out, and the status quo is maintained. But I knew that was going to be a problem, him having his kids with all those criminals. Speaking of judges in this episode, so we learned that Judge Phelan has been dropped from the re-election ticket. I'm not sure how politics works when it comes to judges, but basically because of his association as part of this investigation, apparently he's fallen out of favor with this whole political organization in Baltimore. So we're seeing again that doing the right thing often has a personal cost for all these characters when it comes to their careers. Now on to the main and most important thing. So first of all, we have Orlando, the club owner. He goes ahead with the buy, but it's actually an undercover cop, and they arrest him. And he agrees to give information on Avon Barksdale. He agrees to do a buy bust where he'll buy more drugs from someone else, and this will, lead to some more arrests. Now, Daniels doesn't want to do this. He wants to continue with the wiretap, but again, the bosses want to do this. This is their tried and true method, and again, they don't want them using the wiretap so much because this whole thing connects to top people in the city, so they don't want that. They want to do the buy bust. So they make them do that, and Kima is undercover posing as Orlando's girlfriend. Now the police can't follow too closely behind or else they'll know what's up. So they ultimately have to hang back, and they lose sight of the car. And the car is lured into a trap, and these guys kill Orlando. They shoot up the car. And at the end of the episode, they do find the car, but Kima has been shot. And it's looking like, she's in pretty bad condition. So I really hope she doesn't die here. But yeah, this is the first really big, exciting thing that's happened this season. And man, does it have you on the edge. I was really, worried that something was going to happen to her. Because ultimately, out of all the cops, I think she's the one that we've kind of come to, besides maybe McNulty, the one we've kind of come to love the most. She's definitely one of the best cops on that team. And she has this ambition. She's working hard, studying to move up. And we see her with her relationship. She was out with her girlfriend earlier. And just, man, that would be a huge blow to the police department to lose her. So I know you guys, if you've seen it, you probably know what happens. But man, I'm really wanting to watch the next one. But I worry that if I do, I'm just going to want to watch the next one after that. So I might have to hold on. But yeah, incredible episode. And I cannot wait to see it. Thanks. All right, we are back with season 1, episode 11, The Hunt. And this episode is definitely a hunt. After Kima is shot, and luckily she survived, she is in critical condition, but I'm glad she's not dead. But after she's been shot, the police begin this vast citywide manhunt for the person who shot her. Now that the police has been injured, everyone's on board. Everyone's trying to hunt down the guys that did this, and including like the DEA. They're providing resources. All of homicide's working together. Everyone wants to get her, and kind of uncharacteristically, we have Rawls kind of comforting McNulty and telling him that it's not his fault what happened to Kima. He didn't do it. It was the drug dealers. And he reiterates that he hates McNulty, and he's not doing this out of compassion. It's just the truth. So just a nice moment. I like that this show, even the characters who we kind of think are scumbags, and they are scumbags, they have their human moments, which I think just makes them much more in-depth characters. But while we have all of that going on, the drug dealers are really panicking. They know that everyone is coming after them. They know that particularly the two shooters were Little Man and Weebay. And they know that Weebay can be trusted, but Little Man will rat if he's caught, so they order him gotten rid of. And this is uncharacteristically a time where Stringer Bell kind of fucked up. He should have seen this coming. But he kind of let it happen anyway. So we'll see if there's any consequences for him down the line. Now, something interesting is happening with Bubbles in this episode. He's been trying to stay clean, and he's been avoiding, being around drugs or being around drug dealers. But as part of this manhunt, he goes back into, the pit and tries to see who's missing so they can tell, maybe who is involved in it. And he keeps trying to bring up the fact that he's clean now, but it doesn't come out right. Nobody is listening to him because they're all focused on Kima. So I'm really hoping that this doesn't lead him back into drugs, because he was working so hard to stay clean. Although, like I said, I know how these things typically go, and this seems like a big temptation for him to start using again, because Kima really was... the girl who had his back. She was going to provide him with money, for a clean apartment and everything like that. And she was the one that he called in the first episode when they beat down his friend. So with her gone, I think he'll be even more tempted to start using again. Now, even though the police are all on board with, hunting down Kima's shooter, they're going about it in a bad way. They want to bust down all the doors for known drug dens and seize all the drugs so they can put on the table at the press conference and show everyone that, they're doing their job, which is all politics. It's not actually going to help anything, and it's actually going to hurt because if they take down the main drug house, which the police found, then Avon's just going to mix things up again, and they're going to be back to square one. So they try to hide it, although the major or whatever learns about this. So they know that they have a rat in their team who's giving information to the head ops. Now, I'm wondering who it is. Santangelo was the one ratting to Rawls before, although it seemed like he was grateful for McNulty for helping him out with his murder case. So it seemed like he wasn't going to rat anymore. He chose to tell McNulty that Rawls was coming after him. I'm wondering if he's still the rat, or maybe there's someone else. Maybe there's someone who we don't know. I mean, after all, in this episode, we saw that Herc and Carver steal some money, which they were thinking about doing before, but now they definitely did it. So they're not as clean as they say. So I don't think anyone on the team besides Santangelo would rat. Maybe Prez, so he can get back on the street or something. But everyone else, I don't see them talking. It'll be interesting to see who that could be. Although Herc was gone for an episode, maybe that had something to do with it. Maybe he was giving information. I don't know. But I'd be curious to see who it is. But we also have some tension with McNulty. Again, he was taking Kima's shooting very personally. He felt responsible, and because of that, he really wants to track down who did this. He goes after the lawyer who represents all of these drug dealers and threatens him, with investigation if he doesn't give up the guy. And his girlfriend, the lawyer, the state's attorney, she doesn't want to go after this lawyer because he's a well-known figure in the legal community, and this could hurt her future career. And that pisses off McNulty. His number one thing is he's tired of people putting their own personal interests over justice, which is why Baltimore is so messed up right now. In the show, I'm not talking about real life. I don't know Baltimore, but in the show, the city is so messed up because everyone's so focused on their careers, they compromise on justice. And he gets into a fight with her, and she accuses him of using her, which, to be fair, it seems like he is. He cares about people, but ultimately, like I said, McNulty, his number one thing is he wants to get his guy. He wants to see justice done, even to the detriment of those close to him. That's what I think Bunk was saying a few episodes ago. He's bad for people because ultimately all he cares about is the case. But really good episode. I'm probably gonna watch another one tonight, and I'll talk to you guys soon about the next one. Where's Wallace? Where's Wallace, guys? Where's Wallace? No, but seriously, that was some pretty fucked up shit. So we're looking at season 1, episode 12, I think it is, cleaning up. And just like the title suggests, the Barksdale crew is cleaning up all of their operations. They're getting rid of anyone who could possibly rat them out. They kill the woman who lied in front of the grand jury in the first episode, the one who got D'Angelo off. They kill her just in case they ever go back at her. They get rid of Wallace, obviously, which very sad to see. He was such an innocent kid. Man, that was really messed up. And you could tell that Bodie, despite wanting to be tough and wanting to prove himself to Stringer, really didn't want to do it. He was hesitating. That's why Poot told him, if you're going to do it, do it. Really messed up to see that. That really saddened me. But some other stuff happening in this episode. They send D'Angelo to go pick up more drugs from New York. He gets picked up. They put a bug on his car, and they catch him with the drugs. So he's facing, a lot of charges for carrying those. And he finally decides he's done with the Barksdale crew. After he learned what happened to Wallace, he realizes who these people are. And he knows that they're not looking out for him. They're looking out for their own interests. So he decides to get his own lawyer, and he's going to fight it on his own, which I don't think is going to end well for him. I don't think Stringer is going to let this guy go. He just knows way too much at this point. But we'll see what happens next episode. But meanwhile, on the investigation, since the wiretaps are dead, Burrell wants to end the investigation. He wants them to just bring in Avon on the charges that they have, which is not too much. All they have is the drugs, which is not everything he's done. They don't have the murders. They don't have anything on Stringer Bell now that Wallace is dead. So really, they're only getting a piece of this gang, and it looks like the charges that Avon's going to face are not even that long. He probably won't do that much time. So this feels like a loss to all these guys have all the work they put in. Daniels finally tells Burrell that Burrell brings up the corruption charges that were against Daniels and was holding it over his head. But Daniels says that there was a lot of dirty people that came out of that department, and he knows that Burrells won't reveal his information because it'll make him look bad too. So it seems that the corruption charges might be true, but it might be just something that like everyone had their hands in, kind of like Mike from Breaking Bad. It might have been the whole department was just corrupt, and he was just one part of that. So yeah, we see that Daniels is as a good guy at his heart, and he's ultimately, it seems like he's done with the bullshit, the politics. He wants to do right, especially now that Kima's in the hospital. But they are forced to serve the arrest warrant, so they go in. Avon and Stringer are waiting for them. They turn themselves in because they know they're pretty safe. But they only arrest Avon. They let Stringer go, so he's still out there. And I'm wondering now. This is just a thought, but I'm wondering if Stringer maybe set this whole thing up, because I was always bothered by the fact that he messed up with the Orlando thing. I'm wondering if maybe it's intentional that he did it so that Avon would catch the charges and that he would be able to step up. Because, like I said, he seems like the smartest one out of all of them. So I'm wondering if he maybe has like a master plan. But we'll see next episode. But yeah, so they're gonna sentence Avon, and we'll see where it goes from there. But thank you guys so much for watching this. I can't wait to look at the next episode. I'm probably gonna watch it right now. I just kind of have to know how the season ends. So I'll check that out and report to you soon. God damn. What an episode. We are looking at the final episode of season 1, Sentencing, I think it's called. And man, this is such a great episode. Not what you want to happen, but, there's so much change happening that it was just so exciting to watch. So they've arrested Avon, and they have, cooperators. Specifically, they got D'Angelo to flip. Although later on, his mother, Avon's sister, visits him and convinces him that he has to put family first, and that family is everything. So he actually does not end up flipping, and as we'll see later, he's going to take the whole sentence on himself, which I think he will come to regret that. I think that he is overestimating Avon's loyalty to family. I don't think it's as much as he thinks it is, but we'll see. But without D'Angelo, they don't have enough to really convict Avon of anything besides one drug charge with no priors. He ends up with 7 years, and all of his guys have to do some time too. So in some ways, this is a victory because they arrested him, but it's not nearly the amount of time that they wanted, given the fact that he ordered so many murders, dealt so much damage to Baltimore. They tried to take the case federal for a little bit, and the federal prosecutors want to go after the state senator Clay Davis. They know that he's corrupt, and they know that it turns out he actually has a scam going with the drug dealers. So they donated to his campaign, and he gave them early news that this certain area of Baltimore was going to be redeveloped. So that's why Avon was buying up all these abandoned buildings and property, because he's going to sell it back to the city at an inflated price and make probably hundreds of millions of dollars on this deal. So again, we're seeing just what kind of money that Avon's crew is dealing with here. It's why they have so much power in Baltimore. But ultimately, they don't want to give Avon a plea deal, which I think was kind of stupid, to be honest, because they ended up giving him only 7 years, which is, I gotta imagine, probably what he would serve if he was a cooperator against Davis. And I feel like, wouldn't it be better to go against the heart of the issue, which is the corrupt politicians? I know they want to get Avon because, he's a murderer and he ordered, Kima's shooting. But I do think that, they're ignoring the problem of the corrupt politicians. And corruption, we've seen at every single level. There's a great quote from Daniels to Carver, who we learned that Carver was the snitch. Maybe inadvertently, he was just talking to the deputy ops. But it's one of the reasons he gets promoted to sergeant, I believe, over Herc, is because he gave information, and then Burles put a good word in for him. So, but we learned from Daniels that if the leaders are corrupt, everyone under them is corrupt. And that's probably what happened to him in his district when he was coming up. So again, we're seeing that corruption starts at the very top and it goes to the bottom. And I do hope they get a chance to address that. I don't think they're done with, these corruption charges. They know this senator is dirty. And I got to imagine that next season or beyond, they're going to continue with that investigation. But at the end here, we get a great montage of where all the characters ended up. They all got reassigned out because now the case is closed. They all got reassigned. Daniels did not get the promotion to major that he wanted because he caused so much trouble with this investigation. It went to someone else. But luckily, Freeman went back to homicide. They brought him back. So he's finally where he belongs as an actual cop because he's probably the best investigator on the team. They gave Prez back his gun. He deserves it. He's a good cop. I think he's probably better in like financial crimes. I think he'd be better at solving like paper trail stuff. He's really good at it. But he gets a redemption from the person we saw at the beginning of the series. So he's there. McNulty got reassigned. So he's now exactly where he didn't want to be. He's in the on the boat. I don't know what crimes they solve, like waterfront crimes or something. But he's there. He didn't want to be there. That's the one place he didn't want to be. And it's funny, Lester warned him, they're going to come to you one day. They're going to ask where you don't want to end up. And he told him not to tell them the truth. But maybe he got it from the sergeant. Because he told the sergeant in like the first or second episode that he didn't want to end up on the boat. So maybe the sergeant told Rawls. But McNulty paid the price for all his dealings, but he still has friends. I think he's going to be back in where he belongs, solving crimes. And we also see that on the drug dealers, there's a new pecking order. What's his name? Poot is now in charge of the pit. And it's funny, he's copying D'Angelo's words from the first episode. He's tightening the ship. So it's cool to see that things have come around full circle. Bodie's running the towers. And now Stringer Bell is kind of in charge of everything. He's running things out of the funeral parlor. So, yeah, he's going to be on top now. And that'll be interesting to see because, like I said, I think Stringer is probably the smartest out of all of them. I'm wondering if maybe this was his plan all along to take power from Avon, but we'll see. I'm not sure. But, yeah, that was the episode. Really fantastic season. Very slow start to everything. But when it gets going, man, you don't want to stop. I will be taking a small break. I want to recharge before I jump into season 2, but man, I can't wait. I'm excited to see where the series goes from here. So thank you guys so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next season's reaction coming soon. Thanks. A man gotta have his patrons. Tommy Smith, Abdallah Alamari, Russell, Sean, Graham, Heart of Markness, Broccoli, Placenta Juan, Logan, Clean, John Reyna, Jesse Sterling, Andrew Stewart, Conchok Chofel, Obscure Racing Media, Daz J. Kit, Conan Higgins, Elizabeth Ellis, Irish Nachos, Sharose, Greg Penna, Stephen Lillard, Rex Lee, Virtua Fig, and Sam Cedarland.